everybody, I'm Nicole Barrett, host of a fresh, fun new talk show that brings you legendary stars, icons, and history makers. The conversations are spirited and nothing is off limits. It's the Nicole Barrett Show.
Here I am at the home of former Governor of Texas, Mark White. Being a former Miss Teen Texas myself, I felt that I needed to look up some of my favorite Texas legends. And who better to start with than a man I have admired all of my life. So I hope he doesn't mind if I take a couple of selfies in front of this Texas flag right quick. Okay, I better quit playing before he calls the cops. Think I'm trying to break in. All right, here I am. I'm going to ring the doorbell now. Okay, I'm so excited. Where's the doorbell? Okay. Let's see if the former governor of Texas opens his own door.
Hey, Nicole.
Oh,
how are you, dear?
Oh,
Welcome to Houston. Come on in this house.
thank you. Thank
Come
you.
on in here.
Oh, he opens his own door. I'm sitting here with former governor of Texas, Mark White.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, how are you,
Great,
sir? Oh, it's so
great.
nice to see you again.
Good to
And
see
let
you.
me say, you look the same as you did when I was 8 years old.
Nicole, you're supposed to tell the truth on this show. My hair color's changed and a few other things. So
Oh, I see. Well, let's talk about the changes that you have had in the last, oh my goodness, how long has it been since you were governor?
I was elected 30 years ago, a little over 30 years
A little
ago.
over 30
Yeah.
years ago. So, okay, I was 5. Now, Governor, first of all, for those who don't know who you were before, you were the 43rd governor of Texas, is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's about right.
Oh, close enough?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about your upbringing, because I've always wondered, when does a person know that one day they will be great? How old? I mean, I knew at 6. When did you know that?
I think I'm still waiting on that day. But no, I was born in Henderson, Texas, over in East Texas, and that's very important in Texas to be able to say that you're from the country.
That's right.
And anybody that's from East Texas, that's a very important thing in politics. So even though I didn't live there, but a couple of years when my parents moved me to Houston, as I described it, against my will. So I was 2 years old. Here I found myself in Houston. So I had the best of all worlds. I was from East Texas, country town, grew up in a city, went to city schools, and then spent my summers in the country, down in Corsicana, just below Dallas. My uncle and aunt had a feed store, so I got to load feed and haul feed and listen to all the country folks come in there talking about the cattle business. And then my grandfather on the other side of the family was from Henderson, Texas, and he had moved down to Crockett. And Crockett was kind of cotton country, so I even got to pick some cotton. And let me tell you, don't want to pick cotton. That's bad on you.
Yeah, my grandmother has said a few things about
Yeah.
that, but that's a whole nother conversation. Okay, so after growing up a little bit, you went on to Baylor University.
I did.
Nice Baptist school. So does that mean you're a good Baptist, sir?
I still am.
Oh, wonderful.
Not two things. Two things.
yeah.
Baptist and a Democrat. That's the way I started and still am.
And God bless the Democrat. Okay, now when you went to Baylor, what were your aspirations? Did you think politics then?
Well, actually, I just, many of the people in my family were lawyers. And back in those days, if you were poor, then about the only chance of not being poor the rest of your life was going to be try to be a lawyer, or try to be a doctor, or something like that. So all my family, they weren't smart enough to be doctors, so they became lawyers. And so that's what I wanted to be. And so at Baylor, I went on to Baylor Law School and became a lawyer. And then, of course, being a lawyer and being from East Texas is kind of natural to be involved in politics. And we grew up talking about politics. We thought my University of Texas friends were the liberals. They went to the University of Texas, and they were for Ralph Yarborough. my family went to Baylor, and they were conservatives, and they were for Alan Shivers, and we'd fight all the time in our family. They would always, let's don't talk politics. Let's don't talk politics. Of course, the next thing you know, we're talking politics.
Right.
The argument starts, but we all loved each other, and we managed to survive. And then when I became governor, I got the opportunity to see Alan Shivers and Ralph Yarborough together. They never did love each other, but they at least got along a little better.
Now, when you got your law degree, if I'm not mistaken, it wasn't long after that you did enter the political arena. You were Secretary of State. You were Attorney General.
Right.
I mean, you really took those steps and were. So when you began your term as Secretary of State, did you ever think then, someday I'm going to be governor? Because that's the way I would have been thinking, okay? But I want to know what you were thinking.
I think I'm like a lot of other people. You're scared to death when you get on the stage there, and you think, I'm not sure I can do all this. And I've been appointed Secretary of State, and that, to me, was a very big job. It still is. And I was there for weeks and weeks, and I was watching everybody, trying not to make any big mistakes, and didn't want to draw any attention to me because it embarrassed the governor. And so after a while, I looked around and I said, I believe I can do this work. And so that's like a lot of people. We see people today, particularly women, being involved in things that 25, even as little as 30 years ago, women just weren't there. When I went to law school, there were maybe 3 women in law school at Baylor. Now more than half the people in law school are women. So things have changed dramatically. I can remember when there were no African Americans at Baylor University. Nowadays, not only are there African Americans there, but they're on the front row leading the singing and the praise, and playing football and becoming Heisman Trophy winners and building new stadiums. And fact is, RG3 was so popular with all of those good Baptists out there raising money for that stadium. They raised enough money that they built a new School of Business building. So, this is just a good example of how America has, for too many years, we didn't let African Americans participate. We didn't let women participate. We didn't let Hispanics participate. But look what a better country we are today, because we do that now. We have African Americans doing everything. Oh, we even have an African American in the White House.
I heard something about
Did
that.
you know about
I'm
it?
still investigating.
Well,
I heard something about that. Shout out to you, Obama. I'm just playing. I want an interview.
But, you might get one. But the whole point is, look how much better off we are when we use all the talents of all the people in this country and not leave half the people off, the women, and leave 20% more African Americans, leave another 20% off the Hispanics. Boy, we're going to be a great country. I just wish I could live to see the next 100 years. It's going to really be wonderful.
Oh, wow. Well, you speak of it like it really is, and I appreciate that. I love that. Now, you were Secretary of State and Attorney General both under Bill Clements, is that correct?
No, actually, I was Secretary of State because Doc Briscoe, the governor, then appointed me Secretary of State. That's an appointed job here. And I served for about 4, 5, 6 years, and then ran for Attorney General. When I got elected Attorney General, Bill Clements got elected governor. So we served together. I was the Attorney General, he was the governor.
First Republican governor since Reconstruction.
Right.
Why was that? What happened to create the political shift? And that's a question, by the way, from a viewer. I have Facebook. Are you on Facebook?
I am.
You are? I searched for you. I couldn't find you. Are you on our fake name?
I'm probably don't know enough about it to know whether I'm under a fake name or a real one.
Okay, before the end of this episode, Mark White and I will be friends on Facebook. I guarantee you. Okay, well, I asked my viewers, and really, Governor White, I had no idea how popular you still were. I asked my viewers, do you have any questions for the former governor? I have a string of responses. And several people just said, I really liked Mark. And others were saying, oh, such a nice guy. Someone worked at the Capitol when you were governor. So it was all praise. But one of the questions is, what do you think caused that political shift And do you think it will ever shift again? Go ahead.
Well, everybody's focused on the border with Mexico. Mm-hmm. I've been telling people, as Democrats, that we've been guarding the wrong border. We should have been guarding the border from those people coming in here from New York and California and from all these other places. Many of them were Republicans, and they didn't know that the Democrats had been running a pretty good state down here for a long, long time, and they should consider the Democrats. I mean, we didn't have any income tax. We were low tax, low regulation. We believed in one thing. When we built the roads in Texas as Democrats, they were paid for, and they were free to ride on. Not toll roads.
I miss those days.
And today, the people have been running the show for the last 20 years. We now owe $30 billion. We didn't owe any money when I left office, and that's a big difference. You can be conservative, but you don't have to be Republican. So what's going to change, I think, is the people in this state are seeing a campaign coming up with Wendy Davis. We have Letitia Vanderput, who is running as a lieutenant governor from San Antonio. They're both out of the state senate. They know how to run the government, and they're going to be very good candidates for the governor and lieutenant governor's office. I think we have a good chance of winning. It's a very simple premise, and that is what we try to do with No Pass, No Play is to do in the classroom what we do on the football field. Now let's go out there and see that coach just for a minute. He's got over there, and he's got Frank and Joe and Bill sitting out there on the playing field, and he said, "All right, we're going to run this one over left tackle." And so they go over there, and next thing you know, he gets blocked and tackled behind the line. Coach, come on back. We're going to do that one again. Coach says, "All right, let's go back, try it again." And what happens on the football field is practice, 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 practice. So the day they get on the game field, they're going to win. That's all we were trying to do here, was to give some real importance to the fact that education's a critical issue for these children, young people. And most of them are never going to play in the NFL. There'll be a few that will, and we want to promote that. But at the same time, all of them need to know how to read, write, and count, because if they get hurt one day and get knocked out of the game, they need to get back up, and the way to get back up is to have that education. That's just an insurance policy for these kids. And so we weren't trying to hurt their chances of playing football. We were trying to really make sure that when they did play football, that wouldn't be the only game they knew how to play. They can only play that when they're young and healthy. They're going to live many, many years after that, and if they just went to college and got an education, that's wonderful. We were preparing them to do that. I want to tell you the most important thing is to have those young people, many of whom didn't like it because they had to work harder in the classroom, come up and say, "I'm sure glad we had No Pass, No Play." I said, "Well, what are you doing now? You still playing football?" He said, "No, but I'm a doctor, or I'm a teacher, or I'm a lawyer." But that's the difference that made in their lives. Now the coaches really got hard on me because they viewed that as making it hard on them to win. But remember this, every time you have a football game, one of them wins, one of them loses, whether No Pass, No Play or Mark White was there. It's that way for a long time. So many of them just blame me for their loss. I never did get credit for the victory, though, for those who won. They didn't say, "Woo, I'm sure glad they had that No Pass, No Play. Knocked out that good ball player over yonder, and now I won." They didn't ever say that. But anyway, it was better we did it. The people in this state and young people are better off for it. And it gives them discipline like you have discipline. These coaches, what I was trying to do is to get the coaching principles into that classroom. And these kids can learn. They're smart enough to understand what's going on in that classroom. I wasn't a very good student. If they hadn't have made me study, I wouldn't study.
I think that looking back on it, well, I think now currently, I don't think anyone would argue that No Pass, No Play is the right thing. But, back in the 80s, I think it was an entirely different mentality. Now, when you were governor, I believe President Reagan was in office, correct?
Right.
What was your working relationship like with him, or did you even have to deal with him at all? Because we Texans, we pretty much can take care of things. at least we could take care of things ourselves without having to go to the man in the White House or the federal government. But what was your relationship or experience like under President Reagan?
Well, he was always nice and courteous, and I was to him as well. His vice president was George H.W. Bush, who later became president. One of his key players and chief of staff was a guy named Baker.
Oh, yes, James Baker.
James Baker. James Baker and I ran against each other for Attorney General. As he said, thank goodness you won, Mark. Otherwise, I'd still be Attorney General. So we got along well. We had differences of opinion on things, and we had some fun expressing those differences. We had border troubles back then, except back then it was narcotics coming across the border. And if you remember, you don't remember, but there was a big story about Star Wars. They were going to build Star Wars under Reagan and spend billions and billions of dollars trying to shoot down a missile. And we're still having difficulty doing that, even today, 30 years later. And I made some remark one time about Star Wars, which was his pet program. I said, I'm all for Star Wars. I just wish we could get the Reagan administration to stop those DC-3s loaded with marijuana coming across the Mexican border. And he didn't much care for that. And so when we go up there to have a state dinner with all the governors, every year they do that, and we'd have a state dinner, and they'd have all the governors in the room with the president and his cabinet. Well, they had always put me back over in the corner facing the wall.
Oh, no, I don't believe that.
That's true.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They were nice, but they weren't real nice. George H.W. Bush, the elder, there's never been a more of a gentleman in the White House, sweet, kind person. And now we're looking back in history and we're seeing how wise he was and many of the things he did in foreign affairs. And Jim Baker was a great leader for our country, still is. And so for that reason, I'm grieved today to see that our Democrats and Republicans can't sit down and talk over their differences, make compromises. If it weren't for compromise, we wouldn't have a country today. And when I see these people stand up as Tea Party people and saying, no compromise, it's got to be this way or no way, that's not the American way. America was built on compromise. And we made some tough compromises, some bad compromises, but the country's better off in the long term by us working through the compromises and giving us time to make better judgments later. As an African American, no one should know more than you of the compromises that were made when we started the Constitution. Those compromises were ugly. We had a civil war. That was ugly. Killed more people there than any other war, all the other wars combined. Could have been avoided, should have been avoided if we had stopped and made some more compromises, buy some more time. And look here we are 100 years later still debating over things about race. It's not a difficult issue. I go to the same church that I went to back when that church was talking about segregation. You know what changed? Our hearts have changed. And all you have to do is go read the Bible. It's pretty clear on how you're supposed to treat your neighbor. It's not complicated work. And it didn't say just your white neighbors. It just said your neighbor. Love him as yourself. That's pretty simple.
I'm going to go to my Facebook page because some of my many viewers had questions for you, and I think that they're very, very interesting questions. One of them has to do with...
It's kind of a historic, you can blame it on television, I guess, because people around the world now are able to see on their own television how wealthy we are in America. Even the poor people in America are wealthier than some of the poor people we have around the world, in Asia and in South America and Africa. Many of those people live on $1 or less a day. They see the poor people here and they think, my gosh, they're rich. Well, that's television. Before we had television, just hearing about it on the radio, it's hard to express your wealth over the radio. You can't see it. But now that most people around the world who have access to all this information, well, if I were in South America right now, or if I were and my family were down in Honduras, I'd be beating a trail for the United States, because this is the land of opportunity, of hope, and a chance for a better life. And what's happening right now, and has been happening for 30, 40 years, is Hispanics, Mexican Americans, Mexicans coming into this country for work. You know what they do? They work hard. They say they don't work. My gosh, they're some of the hardest working people on earth. And they work hard, they save their money, and they send it back to their families in Mexico and South America. That's an American family value, is working hard, saving your money, taking care of your family. We have poor people in this country. We need to deal with that. One of the interesting things is the Tea Party, for the first time, is talking about the poor people in America. Well, I'm glad to know that they've recognized the needs of the poor people in America.
Right. I thought they didn't think we had any.
That's
I thought everyone who wanted a job could get a job here.
Yeah, let me tell you, it's tough. Being poor is not a good start in life. If you have a better chance, it's better to be a little wealthier. My family was not rich, but we were certainly not poor like many people are in this world today.
Is that you quacking?
That's my quack.
I love it.
Somebody up north is calling, wanting to come to Texas.
Don't let them in.
I'm not. We've got to check their ID first. But anyway, what I think is probably what Lyndon Johnson would do, and I think Barack Obama's doing now. He's just not making a big political statement about it. Go take care of the children. It's not their fault why they're here. We've got to be compassionate with the children. We got to send a signal that everybody can't come to America. We can't take all the poor of the whole world here. We've got to let them know that they're going to be treated compassionately. But then again, we've got to be sure that we enforce our laws. There's no reason we can't do that. We need to change our immigration law to make it fit the facts. We've got people here that have been here for 20 years, have children. They're citizens. Their parents aren't. Let me tell you what happened the other day in South Texas. This is so sad. I have a place below Falfurrias, and they're building a pipeline through this ranch. And the safety officer on the pipeline said that he came to work one morning. They were the first ones out there and found blood on the ground. And they looked over and found a placenta, and they saw where this woman had given birth in the bucket of a backhoe. This was the cleanest place she could lay down and give birth to her baby. And she got up from that place and walked up the pipeline, coming to America. I can't think of a tougher thing for anybody on earth to do. Man doesn't understand giving birth, but I can imagine this is a horrific occasion, at the same time a wonderful occasion for her. They did turn her into the Border Patrol. They picked her up. But now let's look what we have. We have a woman who's just given birth to a baby, and that baby's an American citizen, born in America. What do? We need to make sense of this stuff. We can't just go on like we are. We've got people in the Congress that if I were in office today, I'd say, you get back to Washington, you're getting paid full time, you sit down and solve this problem, and let's get it done. And don't come back to Texas, don't come back to Idaho, don't go back to your home until you get it fixed. And let's get to work.
Are you listening, John Cornyn?
Well, let me say, we just need to put them down there and do like Lyndon Johnson said, come let us reason together. He took that out of the Bible, but it still works today. We need to come reason together.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, now I have a couple of other questions from Facebook that I think are very interesting. Number one, if you were governor, Nikki wants to know, if you were governor today, would you go into the rainy day fund to help our schools? I didn't know we had a rainy day fund. Who's in charge of that? And when does it rain?
We got a rainy day fund, but we've been in a drought for a long time. Our schools have been in a drought. They've been drying up. Let me just start this easy. Let's just say that you've been elected governor, you've been elected to the legislature, your name is Mrs. Senator, and so you're going to be up there. Let's start off with what's important.
Mm-hmm.
First thing, the most important thing we do in government is to educate our children.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's go sit down. We've got a modern day today. We've got Facebook. We've got all these various technologies. We've got television. We've got Wi-Fi. We've got all this technology out there. Much of it is online.
Mm-hmm.
We still are teaching in our classroom. We're still teaching as though we were back in the 1940s, before we even had television. Many of these technologies aren't in our classroom. Let's go build a classroom for the 21st century, and that's going to be easy. You've got part of it in your hand right now.
Mm-hmm.
My grandkids, not even 3 years old, he can do it. He can find the game on that quicker than I can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's bring that technology to bear on these young people. Get them into an age where they can learn as fast as they want to. Let's go build that school. Let's go see how much it costs. Let's go figure out the dollars. How do we get good teachers? Let's do it the way they do in business. Business, they pay for it.
Yes.
If you want a good teacher, be willing to pay for a good teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And let's get those good teachers, keep them in the classroom, make it easier on them, bring these new technologies to bear. There's nothing more difficult for a new teacher to have to compete with Walt Disney for the kids' attention in the classroom. That kid's used to watching Walt Disney, and now how are we going to get the teacher to hold the class's attention? Let's use that Walt Disney in there to help that teacher. And let's go build it. Let's see how much it costs, pay for it. See, it's easy to...
Thanks for joining me. Over the next few weeks, we will be trying some new ideas and, as always, bringing you legendary stars. Please visit my website, www.NicoleBarrettOfficial.com. Find me on Facebook at The Nicole Barrett Show and on Twitter at Ms. Nicole Barrett. And I'll tell you what, why don't you send me a note on who you would like to see on The Nicole Barrett Show? Can I find your favorite legendary star? You'll just have to stay tuned because you never know who I'm going to meet next. See you next time.